Imagine um mundo onde você possa contar com gente que se dedica a fazer o seu mundo melhor. Gente que está presente quando você precisa de apoio, de confiança, de motivos para acreditar. Imagine contar com pessoas que te estendem a mão diante de seus maiores desafios e que se alegram com cada uma de suas conquistas. Pessoas que te compreendem porque compartilham com você os mesmos ideais e a mesma missão. Pessoas que pensam além, por você, e que estão sempre atentas aos novos ventos, às mudanças inevitáveis, às estações que se sucedem, os engenhos do tempo. Pessoas que reduzem suas dúvidas e multiplicam suas conquistas. Pessoas que sabem que a vida não é só o vai ou o vem, mas o vai e vem que nos leva para o lá dos nossos planos e para o cá da nossa realidade. Imagine contar com pessoas que te ajudam a transformar o não em sim, as incertezas em possibilidades, os desafios em novos caminhos. Pessoas que caminham ao seu lado, mesmo quando o mundo impõe novas e inesperadas barreiras. Essa gente parceira, flexível e humana, atende por um nome: FTD Educação.
Conte com a gente.
Conte com a gente.
Conte com a gente.
Conte com a gente.
Conte com a gente sempre.
Hi everyone, welcome to our StandFor development session. My name is Paula Varanda and I'm speaking from Rio. I'm a consultant at StandFor and it's a great pleasure to have you all here tonight. In order to celebrate this very special month to come, we are having two development sessions. This one today, First Steps in CLIL with Nina Lauder, and another one next week on October 6th, English as a Língua Franca with Priscila Bordon. Well, I'd like to wish you all in advance an awesome Teacher's Day. I know that you've been through a lot for this past 2 years and you deserve some special moments. Well, I have some messages before we start. First of all, we have a surprise for you at the end of the session. We're going to have a raffle and some very lucky people are going to get some gifts. I'm not going to say what it is now, just at the end, right? Well, you have on the description of the video a form that you have to fill in, and you can also find it on the chat. And then you fill it in and you take part in the raffle, okay? Don't leave it to the end because we're going to close this form some moments before the end of the session, right? Well, you can interact with our speaker using the chat. So you can write your comments and your questions, right? And also, at the end of the session, you have another form that you have to fill in with your with your impressions of the event. And after filling this form, you can download your certificate. Okay. Now I'm going to present the star of the night, Nina Lauder. I'm going to read some information about her, right? Nina is Canadian, but nowadays she's living in Spain. She's an ELT and CLIL expert who has been working in the field of education for decades. She has written ELT and CLIL materials for primary and high schools for several publishers, and has also written training material for professional development programs. She currently works as a university professor, teacher, facilitator, and materials writer. Welcome, Nina. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Great. Thank you, Paula. So are we going to begin now? We begin now?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
We're ready.
I'm just going to wait for the slides so we get Lucy to get the slides up and we'll get started. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you very much FTD for this opportunity. And like I said, we're going to start right now with our presentation. Yeah, the slides will be here now. Fantastic. So thank you for joining us. So the title of our session is First Steps in CLIL. And as I've heard from the local reps, CLIL is something still quite new in Brazil. In Spain, we've been doing CLIL programs for a number of years. So I hope I can shed some light on any questions you might have about starting CLIL at your school or in your area. So let's go. Next slide. Fantastic. Okay. Great. Perfect. Okay, so welcome to our webinar. Can you let me know in the chat box where you are from? Which part of Brazil do you live in? So let's see some of your answers there. And let's see if I visited your city at some point. Good evening, everyone. So where are you from? Where are you from? Sao Paulo, great. Let's see where else. Oh, from Salvador de Bahia, lovely. Oh, from Fortaleza, gorgeous. Oh, Goiânia, Juliana, lovely. Fantastic. So the cities so far I have visited. Oh, I haven't been to Rio Grande do Sul. Wow, Patricia, a long way away. Rio de Janeiro, lovely. Oh, I also haven't been to São Sebastián. Great. Yeah, from Sao Paulo, from Fortaleza, from all over the place. Oh, Curitiba, the green city. Fantastic. So lovely to have people from all over Brazil. That's fantastic. So there will be time for questions at the end of the session. But if you have questions as we go along, feel free to ask them and I will try to answer them as we are in the seminar. Please don't worry about copying the slides, taking photos of the slides. Don't worry if the slide goes quickly because you will get a PDF at the end of the seminar with the main slides from the conference. And we'll have support from the FTD team during our seminar. And as you can see at the bottom, there's a raffle. So don't forget to participate in the raffle. There aren't that many of us in the seminar, so your chance of winning is very good. So let's go to the next slide. Great, they've given you the link for the sorteo, for the raffle. So what we're going to do today is first a warm-up. Next, we'll take a quick look at the theory of what CLIL is. We're going to look at different practical ideas. And then, like I said, we'll have time for reflection and for questions. So these are the 4 things we're going to try to do this next hour together. Great, so let's go. Next slide. I'm not controlling the slide. So here we go. Good. Next slide. We're going to start with the warm-up. Very good. How do you feel? How are you feeling this evening? For me, I'm very tired because it's almost midnight where I live. It's 11 o'clock at night. But how about you? How do you feel? If you feel happy, write number 1 in the chat box. If you're feeling a little down, a little tired, a little worried, write 2 in the chat box. And if you're feeling sad, write 3 in the chat box. So Adriana is feeling happy. I'm also feeling happy and tired. So how's everybody else doing today? How do you feel? Great. So we've got another number 1 with Isabella. Oh, good. Paula's also number 1. Very good. Uh-oh. Somebody's feeling tired or worried. Okay, but we've got a lot of number 1s. That's good news. And if you're feeling like number 2 or number 3, hopefully when we finish the seminar, you'll feel a little happier exchanging ideas with your co-workers. Very good. Let's go next. Very good. These are just some images of your beautiful country, because I absolutely love Brazil. I haven't been back for many years, but I love the art. These are some photos from Rio de Janeiro and from Santa Teresa. I love the teachers. I've worked with teachers all around Brazil, some of whom are here. So it's wonderful to see you again, and it's wonderful to work with Brazilian teachers again. So I love the art. I love the teachers. I also absolutely love the food. I love the food in Brazil, the street markets, the restaurants. I love these restaurants that I have the photo of these sort of buffet, where you can take your plate and pick different dishes. Every time I go to Brazil, I come back 10 kilos heavier, because there is such fantastic food with the frioles and the meat and the sopas and everything. So lovely. And then also there's lots to do and see. I was lucky enough 10 years ago in 2010, well, 11 years ago now, to be in your country for the World Cup. So there I am in Fortaleza, and I also saw the final with Spain on the beach in Rio de Janeiro. So lovely to be working with Brazil teachers, and I feel very fortunate to have seen different places in your country. And Rosie, you are right. Your food is delicious. And in Spain, they often say that they have the best food in the world, but it's because they have not visited Brazil. It's got fantastic food and beautiful places to visit. So let's go to the next slide. So now a little bit about your teacher. Paula gave you some information, but here's a little more information. So what you need to do is think of questions. So for example, we see Nina Lauder. Well, the question would be, what's your name? So that one's easy. But let's see if you can guess the other questions. So we have some books. We have some flags. We have the number 30. And we have a racket and a ball. So I'll give you 1 minute to think of the questions to these answers. So what are the missing questions? Very good, Fernando. What books have I collaborated on? Very good. So I've collaborated on CLIL books, English books, resource books. Are you a teacher? Yes. My age? Oh my goodness, I must have a very good camera. No, my friends, it's not my age. Thank you for asking, but that is not my age. I'm a lot older. So yes, what sports do you practice? I absolutely love a sport called paddle. So I love playing paddle. Are you a CLIL teacher? Yes. What sports do you like? Paddle. And the question here, Juliana, very good. How long have you been teaching? So I've been teaching for 30 years. So I'm not 30 years old, but thank you. So I've been teaching for 30 years. I play paddle. I'm from, you guessed, I'm from, na, 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 na. So from a country where we have these animals. Oh, very good. So I am from Canada, and I live where? Where do I live? I live in, see, very good. So where do I live? I live in, no, it's not a groundhog, it's a raccoon. Raccoon, it's a raccoon. So very good. I live in Spain. So no, I don't live in Valencia. I live in Seville, in the south of Spain. Okay. So yeah, no, I'm not actually from Ottawa. I'm from Vancouver. So I'm from Vancouver, from the West Coast, where it rains a lot. And now I'm living in the south of Spain, where it's very, very sunny. Yes, Fernando, Sevilla is gorgeous. It's a beautiful city. And somebody was asking about this animal. This animal is called a raccoon. A raccoon. So there's our friendly raccoon from Canada and the Canadian flag with a maple leaf in the middle. So we know my name is Nina. I've been teaching for 30 years. I play paddle. I'm from Canada. I live in Spain. And amongst other jobs, I write textbooks and resource books. And today we're looking at this resource book, An Introduction to CLIL, which was recently published by FTD. Great. Next slide. Great. Okay. So now you have a job to do. You need to think of the answers. You need to think of the answers. So you have here a quote that says, education is like monolingual. Sometimes it, sometimes it doesn't. It all on how you do it. Very good, Wanderly. You're right. Rocky Raccoon. Oh God, I wrote raccoon wrong earlier. Yeah, Rocky Raccoon. Very good. So now try to think of the answers. Education is like monolingual. Sometimes it sometimes it doesn't. It all on how you do it. So I'll give you 1 minute to think of the answers. You don't need to write them, but you can if you want. Wow, Fernando's quick. I love seeing your photos on Facebook, Fernando. Lovely to have you here. And Adriana, I'm glad you'd like to have the book. So let's see what you think. And in 30 seconds, I'll show you the quote. Very good, Fernando, you're a star. Wow, Marta, you wrote the whole sentence. That's great. Fantastic. Okay. Well done. And Rosie's asking, I'm from Vancouver, Canada. Oh, what am I doing in Spain? Well, living and teaching and working in Spain. And I've been here for a long time, Rosie. So big change. Very good. Okay, so let's go next and look at the answers. Let's take a look at the answers. I think you got them correct, but let's take a look. So next. Yes, Martha, fantastic. Well answered. Very good. Great. Just give us a second and we'll put the next one up. Great. So as you figured out, it says here, bilingual education is like monolingual education. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on how well you do it. So this is a question that teachers quite often ask me. You know, funciona? Does it work? Does it work? I have seen some extremely successful CLIL classes. One of my jobs is as a consultant to go and visit different schools. And I have seen some wonderful teachers with some wonderful projects at their schools. But again, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. It doesn't always work. It will depend a little bit on your circumstances, on your schools, on the resources, on how you set up your programs. So there's no guarantee. But having said that, I have seen some wonderful success stories here in Spain and in Italy and in Portugal, where bilingual education has really set the English program and the science program and the art program off at the school. So let's continue. We've now been working for 20 minutes. So let's have a quick stretch. So I can't see you, but I hope you can take a moment to just stretch your arms in front of you. Stretch your arms above your head. Stretch to one side and stretch to the other side, because sitting in front of a computer can be tiring. So just move your body a little bit. Have a nice cat stretch. Very good. And let's continue. Next. So now we're going to take a look at the basics of what CLIL is. Some of you know, some of you don't. So this will just be a quick review. So let's go next. So first, just what do you know? Don't tell me what CLIL is. Don't tell me the definition. Just tell me, do you know a lot about CLIL? Number one. Do you know a little bit about CLIL? Number two. Or do you not really know very much, that you're a bit insecure? So just tell me in the chat box, 1, 2, or 3. Oh, so Martha knows a lot. Miriam knows a lot. Juan knows some. Oh, so we've got a lot of CLIL experts here. Wow, fantastic. Okay, Milena and Carminda and Pamela and Janina. Hopefully you'll get some ideas. Miriam says number 3. Okay, so we've got a mix in the group. Some of you know a lot. Some of you don't know very much. And some of you know a little. So as we're working, the people who are number 1, feel free to give us some input about what you know. And Martha, excellent point. Knowing a lot is different from being able to work well with it. Very good point. We can be very knowledgeable, but it doesn't always mean that we can put our knowledge into practice. So that's why we're here. Very good. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go now to the next one. Okay, we're going to look now at the definition. So now, A, B, or C. What is CLIL, the term, C-L-I-L? What is that? Is that A, content and language in L2? Is it B, content and language integrated learning? Or is it content and language at international levels? So now in the chat box, just quickly, A, B, or C, what's the correct definition of CLIL? A, B, or C? Okay, so C, we know a little bit. We know a little bit. We know it's the letter B. Great, okay, so you all seem to be getting that right. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which shows the answer. Bing, 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 you're right. The definition of CLIL is content and language integrated learning. So we know what the letters mean, but what does that mean when it comes to teaching? The idea here being that we're combining content with language to teach something. So when we teach English, obviously the focus is on language. When we teach science or physical education in Portuguese, obviously the focus is on the content without teaching the language. So when we're talking about CLIL, it's the idea of teaching a subject area, which might be music, physical education, social sciences, science, maths, using a second language, an additional language, which might be English or French or German or Italian, as the medium, as the vehicle to learn the subject. So let's take a look at some definitions next. Great. Okay, so these are some definitions that we can look at here. So it says CLIL is an acronym for Content and Language Integrated Learning, and it's a term that started being used in the 1990s. This doesn't mean that bilingual education started in the 1990s. It means the term started to be used in the 1990s. For example, I'm Canadian, and I had bilingual education all of my life when I was a child. It just wasn't called CLIL. It was just called education bilingue, l'éducation bilingue. So the term CLIL is new, but the concept is far from being new. So it began being used as a term in the 90s. It describes an approach to teaching school subjects through an additional language to take the emphasis off learning the language itself and place the emphasis on learning content and up through communicating with each other in that language. So the point here of CLIL was that not all students like language learning. Not all students find language learning easy. Not all students are interested in grammar and spelling and structures and word forms. So by teaching things like physical education or science through English, it really helps to create interest and motivation in some learners who might not like English as a subject itself, which is the key idea here to CLIL. In the second quote, it says CLIL refers to situations where subjects or parts of subjects are taught through foreign language with a dual focused aim, learning the content and simultaneously learning the foreign language. And this quote is by David Marsh, who many of you will know is a guru in the world of CLIL. And these quotes come from the CLIL book we showed earlier. So these are some very sort of rough ideas about how CLIL is defined. So let's go to the next slide to take a bit of a better look at what CLIL entails. So here, this is a graph that we included in the book to make very clear what the difference is between ELT, English language teaching, and CLIL. So if we look at the first two columns here with ELT, what's the priority or the focus? So when we're teaching English, or when we're using what we would call cross-curricular activities, you know, when you're using your English book and there's a special page about an artist or a page about volcanoes, we're still there focusing on the language, the focus, the priority in ELT and in cross-curricular is language. We're still trying to focus on big, bigger, biggest, or there is, there are. We're looking at language using content. When we look at CLIL, it's the opposite. The focus, the priority is on the subject. So what happens sometimes to English teachers when we start with CLIL is we get really worried because we say, oh my goodness, they're doing the past in grade 1. Well, sorry, if they're talking about when they were babies, they need to use the past. That's part of the social studies curriculum. So the focus would be on the subject, using the grammar, using the language, but you don't have to sit down with the 6-year-olds and teach them the past of the verb to be. It's a much more natural approach to language. So just keep that in mind, where the focus is. If we look at the second row, who teaches it? And again, this is open to a bit of debate because ideally, CLIL should be taught by the subject teacher. Because as an English teacher, perhaps I don't have in-depth knowledge of science, or perhaps I don't have in-depth knowledge of art techniques. Does that mean that English teachers can't work on CLIL? No, they can work on CLIL, but of course, keeping in mind that ideally, CLIL should be taught by a class teacher, by a subject teacher with a high level of English. If we are English teachers and we're bringing in some CLIL to the class, that's fine. But in essence, CLIL is normally taught by the subject teacher. And then what is the focus for assessment? Well, just like we saw with the priorities, if you're teaching English or teaching cross-curricular, your focus when assessing is on language. Whereas if you're teaching CLIL, your focus is on the content. You're not as concerned about their spelling and their grammar. You're more concerned about the subject matter and if they have understood the concept. So like I said, I think that graph helps make things a little bit clearer about what the difference is between CLIL and language teaching. So let's go to the next slide. Now, don't forget the sorteo, guys. Don't forget the sorteo. Don't forget the raffle. This is another way to look at CLIL in the classroom. So here is a CLIL Klein, sort of a graph showing the differences here. And when we look at the Klein, which is from an article by Bill Bowler, there's a huge range of things you can do with CLIL. So if we look at number 1, maybe it's just bringing in some elements into the class. You know, that you're still teaching English, but you've decided that Fridays are going to be CLIL Fridays, and on Fridays you look at different subjects. If you look at number 2, well, maybe it's something optional, that you provide some extra classes with English. Maybe you provide some art classes in English or some drama classes in English. If you look at point number 3, maybe now you're moving on to teaching an entire subject in the foreign language or in the additional language. So this would be like in Canada, where I learned some of my subjects in French. So this would be a school where they say, well, this year we're going to be doing natural sciences in English, or arts and crafts in English, or physical education in English. So that's a difference. And then, of course, level 4 would be bilingual schooling. In this case, I don't think any of us are working in this situation. This would be, for example, for international schools or schools where the curriculum is in the additional language and the mother tongue would be used as a subject. So what are the goals at your school? What are you aiming at doing with your students? Number one, a little bit of cross-curricular activity with the students. Are you looking to do number two, adding some subjects to the timetable? Are you looking at three, where you would pick a subject and teach that subject in the additional language? So what are the goals at your school, or what are your goals as teachers? Number one, number two, number three, or maybe even number four, if some of you are working at international schools. So what do you think? For your school, what are the goals? One, two, three, or four, according to the CLIL. What are your goals? In reality, your school is closer to one. Okay, that's fine, Martha. I think one is a great starting point. Great, Pamela, also number one. Great, Myra, number one. And like I said, when we're looking at this CLIL, we don't need to be concerned, oh, at my school, we're only doing cross-curricular activities. That's great. It's a good starting point. Maybe if you see that that works very well, you can start increasing the number of hours. Very good. So most of us are looking then at situation number one, bringing some elements in to spice up the lessons, to spice up the day. That's great. Wow, Patricia, so you're at the other extreme. You're in an international school setting. Fantastic. So totally different reality to the people who are in number one. Very good. Anyone else? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Okay, so the idea here is just for you to realize that there are many different ways of doing this, that you don't need to feel upset if you can only allow a little bit of time for CLIL. A little bit is better than nothing. And then again, if you're in a bilingual school situation, well, you'll have a different reality to be dealing with. Great, let's go to the next one. Very good. Welcome to those of you who are just arriving. Welcome. Great. So next. Okay. Great. So as it says here, planning for CLIL might seem overwhelming and daunting at first. It's a good idea to take small steps at the beginning and to set reasonable and achievable short-term and long-term goals. So like I said, what I quite often find when I visit CLIL schools is that people are sort of overwhelmed by it. Oh, I can't do it. It's too much, you know. If it's too much, slow down. It's better to do it correctly, taking baby steps, than to get ahead of yourself where you might risk losing the interest of the students and as a result, your own interest in CLIL because you got ahead of yourself. So take it step by step, do what you can in your circumstances, and keep in mind that there's a huge variety in what you can do with CLIL lessons. So good job. Let's move on. Next. Great. Okay. So now another little question for you. How do you feel about teaching CLIL classes? So if I said to you tomorrow, okay, the CLIL teacher isn't here. You're going to teach CLIL to a group of 10-year-olds or a group of 11-year-olds or to kindergarten students tomorrow. How do you feel? Which egg represents you? Okay, good. Some of you feel, Wonderly feels relaxed. Oh my God, Miriam feels terrified. And Denise feels a little nervous. Let's see. How do you feel? about teaching CLIL. You feel like number 3, Robson. Okay, Robson Felipe. You feel fine. Great. That's great news, Robson Felipe. That's great that they enjoy it. I find that my students also really enjoy it. Good. Amel also feels confident. Fabrizia feels a little nervous, but happy. Okay, great. So hopefully by the end of the seminar, more of you will be feeling like 3, that you'll be feeling fine and happy. Oh, good. Look at that. Robson saying that they ask for CLIL every class. And Miriam says she's afraid of it. Don't worry. Don't be afraid. It's great for us to move beyond our borders as English teachers, and it's also good for the students. And the one thing I found after 20 years teaching English, CLIL for me was oxygen. It was like having an oxygen mask to be able to get away from I am, you are, he is, she is. I can skate, he can't skate. I do, I don't, I like. I don't like. It was so nice to be able to talk about insects and look at volcanoes and do an art project and go out and investigate nature. So, there's a lot of benefits also for us as teachers. And here it says, going beyond communicating and sharing ideas and knowledge is also working towards CLIL. So true, Martha. It's really true. And like you're saying, working towards CLIL. This doesn't have to happen from one day to the next. Very good. So next slide. Well done. And I'm so glad some of you are trying this and liking it. So next, some practical ideas. Okay, so one of the keys to teaching languages and one of the keys to teaching CLIL is this concept of scaffolding. So when we look at scaffolding, we see this man on the construction site climbing up. Take a look at this question. What is scaffolding in the real world? So why do we put up scaffolding? So if they're making a building or painting your house, why do we put up scaffolding? What is it there for? Is it permanent? So in the real world, very good, as Robson says, it's something that builds security. So on a construction site, it also gives the workers security and safety. Very good, Marta. It gives support to the building. You can reach different levels. Very good. It helps you to build something solid. It helps you to go up step by step. Fantastic answers. It gives security. Fantastic. So it gives people safety, security. Very good. So they get safety, they get security. Very nice, Myra. Something to hold on to as you climb up. Very, very good. And is scaffolding on a building temporary or permanent? Very good. A kind of support for them to reach places, to achieve goals. Very good. So is it there forever? Do they leave the scaffolding up forever? Very good, Regina. Temporary. Very good. Very good. So we take it down when the building is strong and solid and standing on its own. So looking at that, how does it apply to the classroom? Exactly the same. Scaffolding is support for your students to give them safety, to help them climb, to help them learn. The more confident they get, the more we can take away the scaffolding. So scaffolding is something we've done all our lives in the English class anyway. You know, we grade activities and we give them word banks and we give them support. So you're going to be applying the same things you did with learners who struggled in English class in your CLIL class. It's applying the same ideas. The only difference here is that you might not only be giving them language support, you might also be giving them support on learning the content. So, exactly, very good what Robinson says. It's temporary, but it helps to build something permanent. Excellent answer. So temporary, but building something strong and permanent. And as Marta says, they're constructing knowledge. It helps to build confidence. Exactly, that you're working on language and content, not only language. And as you said very well there, Marta, this idea of accessing different students, making learning accessible to different students. So there are loads of different things we can do. Just keep in mind that with CLIL, they will need support. So you can't just dive in and expect it to all go beautifully. You do need to provide them with some support at the beginning. One of the things sometimes people say is, oh, but you're going to take away the content. The students aren't going to learn the content. That is not the case. CLIL is not about dumbing down the curriculum. It's about simplifying the way we present the content so that it is accessible to the students. So as an author of CLIL materials, it's not that we don't teach the content, but maybe in Spanish, they would read a big, long paragraph about vertebrates and invertebrates, and maybe in the English version, we do a mind map. So they're still learning the subject, they're still learning the concepts, but maybe we've helped give them some support by taking away big, long paragraphs with complicated sentences. And as Rosie says here, it's like oxygen for us sometimes, that we can teach and work on different things in our lessons. Great. So next, let's move on before we run out of time. Exactly. So important, Fernanda, the context. Make sure there's a context. So scaffolding supports learning, helps learners move to more complicated language, and helps learning new skills, building on the skills they know already. So most of your students will have already been attending language classes and science classes. Well, now you're just going to give them new skills to move on. So next. And all of your points that you're making are very valid. So now, two groups. One group, birthdays January to June. When we're scaffolding, what do we need to keep in mind? For example, we need to keep in mind their age. We need to keep in mind their So don't write yet. January to June, just thinking. When we're scaffolding, what do we need to keep in mind? Birthdays, July to December. What can we do? What can we do? So for example, maybe we reduce the speed we are speaking. Maybe we slow things down to make the language more accessible. Or maybe we use some gestures to help them understand what we're saying. Okay, so for the moment, just think. And let's see what you come up with. Back. You got some hints there, the first group. Very good. So let's see what you come up with. The
Hi, guys. Nina has lost connection, so let's wait some moments till she gets back, okay? She's there
Sorry,
now.
it was me. I disconnected myself. I'm sorry.
No problem, Nina. We noticed, and so we're ready for you. Thank you.
I disconnected myself. I'm sorry, everyone. That was very exciting. Okay, so let's see. What did you come up with? The people from the January to June group. Okay, let's take a look here. January to June. What do you need to keep in mind? Thank you, FTD, your stars. So as the first group is writing their answers, Fernando had a question. How much pre-teaching do you do? How much pre-teaching? Vocabulary, mostly content. Fernando, I tend to teach the key vocabulary for the content. And I might teach them some special grammar structures that they need for the content. But yeah, I do tend to do pre-teaching, but quite often if I'm doing science or art or physical education, you don't really need to pre-teach because actually doing the activity, they use the language in a natural context. So let's take a look now. What do you need to keep in mind? What do you need to keep in mind? Their age. What else? Come on, guys. January to June, no birthdays. Very good. We need to have the vocabulary from the context. I agree with you there, Marta. And the pre-teaching, it really depends on the age group and the students. And of course, it should always be meaningful. We would hope in English and in CLIL. So let's take a look at some of the answers. Let's hope I don't go off screen again. So let's see. Go ahead. Let's go to the next slide. Very good. So I think we need to keep in mind the age of our students, what skill we are working on, what environment we are teaching in, what opportunities do they have to practice and develop their new skills. We need to keep in mind the mixed levels, and we need to keep in mind mixed needs and mixed speeds. Yeah, so you're right here. We need to consider the age with CLIL in order to grab their attention. Yeah, for example, Fernando, fantastic. If you're working with toddlers, we don't normally give them pre-teaching vocabulary anyway. You might show a couple of flashcards and then you do the activity. Very good, and make sure it's something fun. And now for the next one, what can we do? So some of you have said we can model. Very good. Let's take a look, just because we're running out of time. So let's go to the next slide. What can we do? We can reduce the speed. Exactly. Yeah, we always need to consider their age. You're right. We need to consider their age and if the language and the subject is age appropriate. Very good. So let's do next. Very good. So we can reduce the speed. We can give information in chunks, in short segments. This is the question that Fernando had. We can pre-teach unfamiliar vocabulary. Very good, Martha. We can make classes hands-on. We can include pauses, allow some downtime. We can ask open-ended questions. We can encourage curiosity, as Martha says. We can rephrase things. And obviously, we can provide lots and lots and lots of visual support. And I totally agree with Pamela as well, that we can model and show examples of what we expect from them. So these are some things we can use in the class. Great. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, I'm glad, Rosie, I wasn't laughing when I turned the camera off. Whoops. So here, scaffolding, a helping hand. We can provide a supportive atmosphere. We can model and give examples. We can provide language support. So although we're teaching content, we can give them language support, obviously. We can brainstorm with them. We can divide things into chunks. And of course, we can use things like graphic organizers. And as the quote says here, you just have to have the guidance to lead you in the direction until you can do it yourself. And I think that is the key idea to scaffolding in CLIL, giving them guidance until they can do things for themselves. So great, let's move on. Next. Great. So here are some examples from the CLIL book. I tried to include lots of practical examples because I think there are lots of CLIL books on the market that explain the theory and where it came from and the history and why it's beneficial. But quite often I found at the beginning, especially teaching CLIL, I didn't really have that many practical ideas on how to do it in the classroom. So we've tried to include in the book lots of different practical ideas. Very good. And somebody is saying here, Cynthia is saying pre-teaching vocabulary in chunks helps them express themselves better. So what we're looking at here, for example, sometimes with the older learners, I do surveys with them, like, what do you do if you find a word you don't understand? What can you do if you don't understand the instructions? So giving them some things to reflect on. Then you can also use these things that I love called writing frames. So you give them the outline of what they need to say or what they need to do. So for example, the main difference between blah and blah is that is than . So giving them these frames where they only have to sort of fill in the blanks can help them a lot. Or I believe that because or first, then, finally. So the more language support we give them for the context they're working in, the better. And again, some of us get paranoid, sort of saying, oh my God, you know, they're doing comparisons and they're only 5. Well, they do comparisons at age 5 in their own language. It doesn't really matter if they make a little mistake when they're saying things. You know, if they say, oh no, you know, Jupiter is big than Earth. It's not the end of the world. The most important thing for me is that they know that Jupiter is a planet that is larger in size than the Earth. But giving them frames can help them a lot. Sentence stems, timelines, and graphic organizers. And another thing I use a lot are these Be the Teacher cards. So for kids age 9, 10, and up, the subject we're working on, I give them the questions and the answers. And then they work in pairs, asking each other, but they have the answers. So they feel very confident that they can ask the question and they can correct their partner. So things like this can help the students become more confident and more fluent with the language. Fernando had a question here. How important is teaching language chunks? Do you let them contribute first in L1? Definitely, Fernando, at the beginning, I let them answer in L1. It would be crazy for me to walk into a grade 2 classroom where they've only learned, you know, red, yellow, blue, 1, 2, 3, mother, father, sister. And suddenly I'm talking to them about, you know, I don't know, the solar system. It would be absurd for me to expect them to suddenly, miraculously, be talking to me about the solar system in English. So I speak to them in English. I give them the input in English. But if the child says to me, señorita, la luna es una planeta, you know, the moon is a planet, I'm not going to sit with that poor child and say it in English. You have to say the moon is a planet or not a planet. No, I'm just going to say to them, oh, you want to know if the moon's a planet? Well, the moon isn't a planet because there are only 8 planets and things like that. So I think that we should give the input in English as much as possible, but that obviously if the child at the beginning is using their own language, what I would do is echo or recast in the target language. Very good. Okay, so that, yeah, language help boxes, Martha, fantastic. Glossaries, language boxes, all of these things can help. And again, sometimes teachers tell me, well, if you give them the glossary, you're giving them the answers. No, because this is not a vocabulary test. It's not like I'm giving them the answers with the translation. If they don't know the order of the life cycle of a plant, it doesn't matter if I tell them what a stem is or what a leaf is, or what a seed is. I want them to know what order those things go in. And so it's, if I'm giving them some language support and help, that's not taking away from teaching them the content. Great. Okay, so let's move on. Yes, we've only got 2 minutes left. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, let's move on. Some examples of scaffolding. Sorry. Great. So next, I'm going a bit slower than I expected. Next. Okay, this is just a quick break for you, but I don't think we have time to do it. But just something you could try with your students. You hold your nose, hold your opposite ear. So do it at home if you want to. Hold your opposite ear and change. And change. And change. And shake your hands out. And next. Now, Paulina, I might need just a few minutes more. So sorry. Okay, so next. Okay, so let's move along. Great, so that little brain break is helpful. Doing your back and forth with your nose and your ear. I hope you were able to do that. I hope you were able to do that. Next. Okay, just give us a second. Okay, just for a sec. And we're moving on. I don't know if you've ever tried these brain breaks at school, but I know my students love them. The things like crossing their arms and crossing their hands over from their nose to their ears. Okay, let's see, there's a question here. Nina, our school is going to hold a CLIL project that the CLILs are going to read books, and it's part of their CLIL activity. That's great. Especially, Robson, if they can read non-fiction books. There are loads of fantastic non-fiction readers out there. So it could be a great idea to have them read and write some ideas that they have from their non-fiction readers. Great. So thank you, Lowry, for passing that on. Excellent. Here's some more activities. So again, you can use things like graphic organizers. I use loads of graphic organizers with my students. And I think they're very, very useful for the students. Okay, great. Thanks, Lowry. Great. So graphic organizers. Here we've got some things like life cycles, but I mean, there are endless uses of graphic organizers in class. I've also provided you with the example of a dice that they use for the life cycle of a bee. Other activities I use with the students are things like 2 true, 1 false. So for example, here talking about fungi. So fungi absorb nutrients, and so they have to decide which one's true, which one's false. Here, for example, I use a lot of stories for CLIL. This is a fantastic story. In the book, actually, we provide you with a whole list of different stories you can use, because I think that stories are an excellent way. So like, if you look here in the book, you'll have a list of all sorts of different stories you can use in class. And this one I just love, Not a Stick. It's a little piglet with his stick, and they're saying, what are you doing with that stick on your head? And he says, it's not a stick, it's a crown. Or what are you doing with that stick in your hands? It's not a stick, it's a fishing rod. And so the books Not a Stick and Not a Box are great for their imagination. Handa's Journey, Handa's, lovely story about a little African girl with the fruit on her head and how the different animals steal the fruit. So use stories if you can. As Robson said, use nonfiction readers, use authentic material with them. The more exposed to the language, the better. I also do a lot of pair work with the students. So here they have the sunflower, and one student has to say, what's number 1? Stem. What's number 3? Flower. So that they have a chance to use the language for very simple communication tasks. And then I also use a lot of these things where they have sort of role cards. In this case, the students have role cards as dinosaurs. And then they have to ask each other and interview each other, you know, what does your dinosaur eat? Where does your dinosaur live? What's your dinosaur's name? So again, making sure that they have, structured material that's focused on the content, but that allows them to start communicating a little between themselves. And Denise, what are you saying about the elbow cough? The elbow cough. I'm not sure why that came up. So very good here. Different activities. And like I said, in the book, we've tried to provide you with loads of different activities. Exactly. CLIL projects with books. Great. Okay. So next, Lowry. Great. Yeah, the title is if you look it up, Robson online, the books are called Not a Stick and Not a Box. So you can find them online. You can find the title of the stories online. Yeah, I'm just going to write the name of the author for you in the chat box. But her books are called Not a Stick, Not a Box. They're 2 different story books. They're lovely. And the author is Antoinette Portis. Sorry, I'm writing very quickly. But there you've got her name. Yeah, check it out. I think you'll really like those books. So now here's a little activity that you could also do with the students. These are sort of think, pair, share activities where you give them a list of animals. You then say to them, obviously, you've pre-taught this material. You're not just going to jump into the class like this, but they know the animal groups. And then you say, okay, well, where does cow go? Is cow a mammal, a reptile, a bird, or an insect? So they each write the answers in the correct column. Then you ask the students, okay, on your own, write 1 more animal in each column. And now discuss with your partner. And now let's look together. And so these sorts of activities also give the students an opportunity to review knowledge, to share knowledge with each other, and then compare with the whole class. So let's move on. Next. Great. Another activity I use a lot in classes with flashcards. So I might put 2 flashcards on the board or be holding up 2 flashcards. And I ask the students to either point or to turn physically left or right. If you're doing this online, with online classes, you can just have left number 1, right number 2. So then I would give them things like sentences, which I would either show or I would say, for example, I've got wings, or I have wings. And they all have to face left or face right. I have fins. I'm a fish. I have cold blood. I'm a mammal. So we review the language, review the body parts of the animals or whatever we're working on by having the students use physical response to show their opinions. Then I quite often put up some cards on the board. I allow time for the students to think of some sentences in groups, and then they can test their classmates. So testing knowledge, but using physical response and games, which can make it more meaningful for them. Let's go next. You're doing very well. We're almost finished. This is another thing I use a lot, and I'm sure you've done these as well, these guessing games. So like we did at the beginning with what's your name? How long have you been teaching? Where do you live? It's a bit of a guessing game. Now we're applying the same idea to insects. And I find students are fascinated by insects. They love bugs and mini beasts and insects. So again, we review the vocabulary, we introduce the insects. So we have a dragonfly, a bee, a fly, an ant, and a beetle. And then the students, we model the activity as the class, and they work in small groups, asking and answering questions. With this game, I always have, like a 3-question minimum or a 5-question minimum. Because what we want to avoid with this is that the students just say, is it green? No, it isn't. And they say, bee, fly, dragonfly. I don't want them to just shout out answers or shout out numbers. So normally I require them to ask a minimum of number of questions before they can guess the answer. So we don't have time right now, but things like this can be very useful in your class. Simple machines, complex machines, landscapes, insects, animals. You can do all sorts of guessing games to review the language and the contents. Okay, Fernando, so it looks like something you did on Padlet. Great. Yeah, I find the kids really enjoy these activities. So Laurie, next. Well done. Great. Another thing I think is really important to use in class are songs. So again, I think I'm very lucky because I taught English for 20 years and then I started getting involved in CLIL projects. So a lot of the things that we used in English classes that weren't normally done in science books or physical education classes or art classes, we then applied those things to the CLIL books. So the idea of using music to teach concepts, the idea of using images to teach concepts, the idea of using chants, the ideas of using stories, of using context, of using comics. So I think a lot of the things we do in ELT, we can apply to the CLIL world. So in this case, for example, using a song you all know, heads and shoulders, knees and toes, we can do flower, stems, leaves and roots, flower, stem, leaves and roots, big plants, small plants, grow, flower, stem, leaves and roots. So just using a song they already know, but applying it to a science concept. And again, by doing flower, leaves, roots, they're learning the parts of the plants, but learning through physical actions. Or for example, here, it's fall. So darling clementine. So it is fall, it is fall, it is fall, yes it is. Leaves are falling, days are shorter, it is fall, yes it is. And then you could maybe write verses for it is winter, it is winter, it is winter, yes it is. Snow is falling, days are colder, it is winter, yes it is. So, you can invent new verses or have the groups write verses. And then you can also just use very simple chants with flashcards where they do things like mountain, valley, coast, mountain, valley, coast, mountain, valley, coast. So if you're not musically inclined, which I'm not necessarily musically inclined, you can just use chants. So again, we provided some of these in the book, and we've also given you some suggestions on how to write your own chants, your own raps, your own songs with your students. So a lot of the things we already do in our English classes, we can apply them to our science or physical education classes. So Laurie, next. So using songs and using stories and using posters and using flashcards are all valuable things for our students. Great. So let's move on. Thanks, Laurie. I've got my super helper here. So very good. Last ideas here. What are some of the benefits of CLIL? What are some of the challenges? So let's take a look here. Let's just start. Don't worry about the names because we're already over time. So what are some benefits of CLIL methodology? What can you think of? Benefits? or challenges? Anything you wanted to add here? Robson's already given us some very nice benefits that his kids ask for the CLIL classes and want more CLIL classes. So that's a huge benefit. Great. So what did we think? What are some of the benefits? Okay. The involvement, they enjoy it. Very good. The interest levels. Excellent. Fantastic. So some of the things I had here, contextualizing the language, which Fernando talked about at some point, and Marta. They make real world connections. There's greater exposure to English without having to increase the number of hours of English in school. What I said before about reaching a broader range of students, that not everybody likes English, not everybody likes learning language. So if we're teaching other subjects through English, we reach more students. And it also, we find, increases motivation in the classroom. And the answers you guys are giving are excellent. More language production, more engagement, much more teaching than just the languages. And then here are some challenges that Marta and Robson have come up with. The pacing, how to pace things. Yeah, it takes a while, Marta. It takes a while to figure it out. Robson, very good. The parents, but I think that happens, Robson, with English and with CLIL. That, you know, they sometimes think, well, if they're singing or reading a storybook or, playing a game, they're not learning. So that happens in CLIL and in English and in education in many contexts. And again, quite often the same parent who's telling you, oh, they're only playing. They have the kid on the tablet 23 hours a day. So I think sometimes we have to sort of ignore some of those opinions and just get on with it. We have to think of how to pave the way. Very good, Denise, that they learn quickly with songs. So let's take a look here at some of the challenges. So Lowry, next. Very good. Thanks, Lowry. Some of the challenges, we don't have resources. Things are getting a lot better. I mean, when I started teaching CLIL, there was nothing. So, I mean, my very first CLIL class, if you can believe it, was at an international school in Spain in the 90s, early 90s. And we had to order books from the United States, and it was a nightmare. So, I mean, now there are more resources. Planning time is complicated. Language levels, sometimes complicated. Subject-specific terms can be complicated even for us. Assessing and coordinating between teachers. Yeah, exactly, Miriam. When the students are online, we have to do hybrid classes, which can make it a bit more complicated. But again, same things that you did with your English lesson, you can apply to your CLIL lesson. So like I said, teaching is not without challenges. CLIL is not without challenges, but I still firmly believe that the benefits outweigh the challenges. And again, keep in mind that as CLIL is so flexible, you could even just have a few sessions a month that are dedicated to CLIL where you can see and experiment how the students do. So great, we're almost done now. Larry, next. Very good. I don't think we're going to do this review because there's a bit of a delay with the cam and it's getting late. So just on your own, think. Very good. So Robson, for example, does CLIL once a month. Fantastic. You can do CLIL once a week, CLIL once a month, a CLIL project at the end of the term. Do it little by little. I think it's worth it. Very good. And as Fernando says in the StandFor Evolution series, there's CLIL on a regular basis. So just reflect. We remember what CLIL is. CLIL was content and language integrated learning. Scaffolding was this idea of providing support, providing safety, temporary support for our students to help them feel more confident. We did a lot of different CLIL activities. I hope you remember some of them. No, you're right, Martha. CLIL is not just a big project at the end. But like I'm saying, for those people who can't apply CLIL in its full form, if you want to just start with some little bits to get the students going, it's better than nothing. Exactly. Very good. Every class you can teach more things. Very good, Robson. One of the activities was 2 truths and 1 false. We also had left and right. We had our graphic organizers. Very good. And then we looked at the benefits of CLIL. Yeah, Martha, I agree with you. If we can do every class a little bit, fantastic. Unfortunately, not all school situations have that flexibility. So if you can put a little bit of CLIL into every lesson, or if you can do a little bit of CLIL every week, brilliant. But that isn't always possible in all teaching contexts. So I think we do need to keep in mind the different realities of different teachers. But you're right, if you organize things well, if your team is on board, you could do CLIL essentially whenever you want to. Very good. Exactly. Fernando saying you can count different parts of the body on bugs instead of on people. So even just talking about antennas or talking about the number of legs on insects or arachnids, you can apply those little bits of CLIL in each class. But again, you know, applying those simple things is a way of introducing CLIL, and doing a longer project at the end of the term is another way of introducing CLIL. Very, very nice. Martha, good point. Using the language and making it useful, not just repeating. And this is one thing to be very careful of in Spain. When we talked about this idea of bilingual education can be well done or not well done, there are cases of schools here where CLIL for them is bringing home 50 words on a list, translated into Spanish, and tomorrow I give you a test. And so the poor little kids are sitting there, you know, like, I don't know, with things like ramp or inclined plane or, you know, simple machines. And, you know, the poor little things are sitting there just memorizing and regurgitating, but they don't have any idea what the machines are for or any idea of what the language is useful for. So again, as Martha and Fernando are saying, the language needs to be meaningful, useful, simple, motivating. Or like Fernando saying here with the weather. What's the weather like today? Okay, let's pick a country. What's the weather like today in Canada? What's the weather like today in Senegal? So, you know, there are all sorts of ways to bring in CLIL to your classroom. So very good. So Laurie, next. Fantastic, guys. We're almost done. Oh, reflection and questions. Laurie, next. Very good. So let's take a look here. Number 1, do you understand what CLIL is? Yes or no? So number 1. Number 1, yes or no? You understand what CLIL is? Good. Some of you already knew what CLIL was before. What about number 2? Number 2, any new ideas today? Yes or no? Yes or no? Oh, great, Miriam. So now you feel more confident about what CLIL is. Did you get some new ideas? So number 2, yes or no? You got a bunch of ideas. Great. Are you like the chants with the head and shoulders? Great. Excellent. And number 3, yes or no? I need a coffee. Oh, yes, I want to come to Brazil, Robson. I want to come to Brazil. I'll go back whenever you invite me. I love Brazil. So number 3, I need a coffee. I need to go to bed. I need to go to bed because it's almost 12:30 at night. So who needs a coffee? Or who needs to go to bed? Oh, good, Paula. You understand what CLIL is, and you always need a coffee. Yeah, I need to go to bed too. It's late. Okay, very good. Too late for coffee. Oh, good, Belle. Maybe now you want to have a martini or have have a beer. Very good. Pues now, Lowry, next. Very good, Lowry. Fantastic. So the next slide. How do you feel now? How do you feel now? Yeah, Miriam. There is a lot of support material in the bibliography in the CLIL book. So like I said, you've got lots of resources here, lots of references there. So if you're looking for some more literature and support material, at the back of the book, there's a huge bibliography. So how are we feeling now? Oh, good, lots of threes. Yay, good job, team. Well done. So hopefully we feel a little more confident than we began. Great, so Lowry, next. And now the last question here. What did you like best? The warm-up, where we had our Rocky Raccoon and the guessing games and things like that. Did you like the warm-up? Number one. Did you like what is CLIL? Number two. Did you like the part on scaffolding? Or did you like the practical ideas? Which section did you like best? Which section? Okay, so scaffolding for some, you liked it all. Okay. Okay. Great. Oh, it's so nice to work with you guys again. I just love Brazilian teachers. Thanks, Martha. Thanks to you and Fernando and Robson and the rest of you all participating. It makes it very easy. Great. So let's go to the next slide. Very good. So Lowry, next. Very good. So some of you are saying, where can I get that book? Well, the book on an introduction to teaching CLIL, the team from FTD will give you information. The different chapters of the book are what's CLIL, how to plan a lesson, which we didn't do in this section, scaffolding, active learning, how to use different resources, and assessments. So there's a link at the bottom. As I said, I'll be sending you the PDF, so you'll get the link. If not, Paula or Belle or Lowry can give you the information. So you've got lots and lots of resources there if you need us, if you need them. So thank you for joining us. And Lowry, next. So good job, everyone. This is my web page, which I'll also be sending to you, where you have my LinkedIn, my professional Facebook, my YouTube channel. So you have that there if you need it, and my email if you'd like to send me a message. Okay, I don't know if the video will be available. Oh, great, Fernando. So the video will be available. Oh my God, with me yawning and falling off, going off cam. Okay, so next, Lowry. If you have any questions, please stick around. So some of you might have to go, but I'll stay here for 5 or 10 minutes if you have some specific questions. And Lowry, next. The final quote here is, develop a passion for learning. If you do, you will never cease to grow. And I think this is true for us as teachers and for our students. If we can develop a passion in them for learning, they will never cease to grow. So keep that in mind as you venture into your CLIL classes. And Lowry, next. Thank you for joining us. So good job, everybody. Thank you, FTD. Thank you, Lowry, for passing the slides so well. Thank you, Paula and Belle and Fernando, for all of your inside support, and to all of you for your great answers and for participating. And just one here, Robson has one question. I want to make an egg week for the students to raise Yeah, eggs. I quite often for eggs, you can do anything about diversity, like different colored eggs, different sized eggs, but they're all the same inside. You can also do things where the kids use an eggshell to make a pet, like to make something with the hair growing. You can color eggs, like colorful Easter eggs, looking at different countries of the world and how they color the eggs. So the world of eggs is huge, Robson. So if you want to do egg week, yeah, the hairy egg. Not exactly a hairy egg, an egg with grass growing out of the top. So you use the egg shell to make a little plant. So yes, like a hairy egg. So very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much. That was really special and inspiring. Thank you so much for your time. And it's really late for you, right?
Oh, yeah. It's 12:30.
Yeah. So thank you so much. We really enjoyed spending time with you tonight, right? And guys, before we finish this session, I have some messages for you. Don't forget to fill in the form with your impressions about this session, because then you can download your certificate. Yes, at the end of the form, you have a link to download it. And also, don't forget that next week we have another StandFor development session, English as a Lingua Franca. And I think it's going to be really good as well. So you're going to get the invites very soon, okay? Now it's time for our surprise. Remember that I told you that we have some very special gifts for you? Well, we have Nina's book as a gift. Yeah, so 5 lucky people are going to get this book, An Introduction to CLIL by Nina Lauder. Okay, so Laurie, can we have the raffle now? She's preparing the raffle. So we have all the people that filled in the form, and we're going to see the 5 lucky ones in some moments. So and then you are from different parts of Brazil, right? And then you see we check with your consultant how this book is going to be delivered to you. Okay. We're going to take the notes of the people. Wow. 3, 2, 1, go. Ta-da! Amelina Silveira, Cláudia Cecília Nocite Alcântara, Patrícia Andrucioli de Oliveira Doratiotto, Daniele Belezia, Glaucia Oniki. Okay, congratulations. You're going to get this awesome book, which is part of a series of books we are releasing for teachers' development. Yeah, so that's great news for everyone. So thank you so much for being here with us, and see you next time. Bye-bye. See you. Bye, Nina. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks a million.